Hey everyone, it's me, Speed Force Legends, and today I'm going to be making a video, and that is 5 things I want from The Flash Season 8. Now, if you've been around since my early days on YouTube, you know I did the same thing for Season 7, and unfortunately, most of those things did not happen, but some of those things were better than how I wanted it to be. Although, now I'm going to be saying my hopes for Season 8. Some are most likely not going to happen, but these are all either what can make it great or what can make it the best. But let's get this started. Number 5, I want it to be great all the way through. Of course, that's why the first 3 seasons are the best for me. And Season 6 had a great first half and was consistent, and had a great main villain, Bloodwork, but the second half kind of ruined it for me, but was still good. Well, don't even get me started with Season 7, although the second half was great, and honestly thought that Godspeed was a better villain than people give him credit for. But as for Seasons 4 and 5, they were not great, but they were still enjoyable. Although, what I mean by that is making sure that the villain is not wasted, and making sure that the dialogue is accurate. It doesn't have to have a dark tone, but at least give it an accurate storyline, and actually just build up from what the previous seasons were setting up for. And more importantly, if it's going later on in the season or a story arc, don't make what happened earlier in the season pointless. And what I mean by those things is, don't lie about Red Death coming, but I'll talk more about that later in this video. Actually, what I mean by that is don't lie about any villain coming. Also, don't have the main villain get defeated way too early for a copycat that goes like, oh, I'm the real threat, and make that first seem pointless. I'm obviously talking about Cicada for a good example, on how he sounded so threatening at the beginning of the season when he was the one who got away and was never caught, but then turns out that was Cicada too in Nora's timeline. What? Well, that's one thing they better not do here. But let's move on to my number 4. Coming in at number 4, I wanted to have a great main villain. And I'm not just talking about one of them, I'm talking about both of them. That being Red Death and Cobalt Blue, and yes, it's becoming obvious at this point. I'll talk more about that in a future video. But obviously, I'm talking about ways on why Reverse Flash, Zoom, Savitar, Bloodwork, and Godspeed all worked well for me. It wasn't because they were speedsters. In fact, Bloodwork was not a speedster, and he was better than Godspeed. While I'm talking why the Thinker, Cicada, Mirror Monarch, and the Speed Force had wasted potential, at least in my opinion. For DeVoe, after half the season, he started body swapping so many times, and that was a great concept at first, but then it really dragged out when it just became forced in just to become overpowered at the end, and it got really cringy when taking over women's bodies, and then that really ruined his character for me. That's just a shame, because He was one of the best Flash villains in the comics, and overall I think he should have been more similar to his comic book counterpart. Cicada, like I said earlier in this video, he did not live up to his potential. I thought he definitely deserved a lot better and should have been the antagonist for the season until the end. But then when Cicada 2 came around, it really took away from his threat level when they said he was immortal, because in the comics, David Hirsch, who was a cult leader instead of a metahuman serial killer, he was immortal. And not only did that kind of ruin the character for me, but also it felt like a slap in the face to me as a comic book fan. For Eva, her story arc felt very dragged out in Season 6. Well, it just became boring, where it really felt more dragged out than the first 5 seasons. And it doesn't help with all the filler episodes we got and how many times it got delayed. It was so annoying. But as for the Speed Force, not only was she in a bad story arc, that god-awful Forces storyline, but also she had very little screen time as the villain, when it felt like at that point the writers ran out of ideas on who the villain was. And right when we all thought it was Psyche, it came at last minute, and then all of the other weird stuff that happened. She definitely deserved more accurate dialogue that would have gave her a better rivalry with Barry. So, yeah. What Red Death and Cobalt Blue can do to succeed as villains is have more accurate dialogue, not having to drag out the season just to become more powerful, not having their threat level taken away with the copycat villain, not dragging out their storyline for the majority of it, / focusing on filler episodes, give them a satisfying defeat, and give them enough screen time as the villain. So, sorry for the long rant, but I had to be honest. Although, let's move on to my number 3. Coming in at number 3 is I Want a Strong Ending. Now, this is also why the first 3 seasons worked so well. Say what you want about seasons 4, 5, and 7, but season 6, second half at least, did not have the strong ending, mainly because due to the pandemic, it got cut short to 3 episodes when they really should have filmed it a lot earlier. And I just hope that it will never happen again, because you all know that back when, shortly after season 6 ended, I was really frustrated about that, and because we still technically live in that kind of world today, I really, really don't want that happening with this season. So, by strong ending, not only satisfying in its own right, but also actually finishing up its entire storyline. Coming in at number 4, well, actually number 2 of what I want from The Flash Season 8 is I want it to be the Arrow Season 5 of Flash seasons. Now, I know that if you've seen any of my past videos, you know that you're probably thinking you're over exaggerating. You've even said it yourself. The Flash is never going to be great again as a whole, and even if it is, it's definitely not going to be the best by overthrowing Season 2. Well, for here, I'm just saying what it can do to possibly overthrow that. I mean, that would include, well, consistency. That's why the first two seasons and the majority of Season 6 worked so well. And also, why? For quality, especially the first three seasons, and to some extent Season 6 and second half of 7, while pretty much the only bad story arc for me was the God Complex, but still. And not that mainly includes all the reasons I explained in this video to stuff like that, and really why I say this is because after Season 7, we really do need something that's like Arrow Season 5, because the last season was like Arrow Season 4. For those of you who have not watched Arrow or have gotten to Seasons 4 or 5, or my reviews on them, Season 4 is easily probably one of the worst seasons of the Arrowverse, because, well, from what I know, there's probably worse seasons, although it focuses way too much on drama. So many plot points, like it literally Oliver and Felicity breaking up is more important than Damien Dark killing Laurel Lance. What? How did we go from the likes of Malcolm Merlyn and Slade Wilson to this? But in Arrow Season 5, they completely changed that with a badass villain like Prometheus and actually a sense of urgency that made Oliver want to kill again. While in the Flash Season 7, for, well, excluding Season 6, even though there are a little bit of issues I had with that as well, and unfortunately it kind of carried over to the Godspeed storyline, which did not save this last season from being the worst. It's so cheesy and cartoonish, like you'd expect from Power Rangers, Care Bears, and Nickelodeon shows. Like, the dialogue from the family, brother, sister, dad, only because Barry and Iris created the forces, and since random people possess those powers, they think they're related to each other, so they call Barry and Iris their parents, which sounds so stupid. And then, all because of... It just really hurts my brain trying to explain it. Don't even get me started on Chillblaine, the breakdance scene, and the lightsaber fight too, which I will admit, it is cool to see, and I do think it's comic book accurate in a good way and such, but I can kind of understand the point of view of why the fans did not like that, because it kind of became a parody of itself. And also, another reason on why Season 7 got bad, well, he thought the Forces storyline was terrible. The interlude is what ruined the Godspeed arc as well, made it too short. I mean, got a cringy episode to an unnecessary episode to one of the worst episodes on the show yet. And they were all straight up filler. So hopefully with Interlude 2, Eric Wallace or whoever is writing this will learn from their mistakes and maybe have something from the future to set up graphic novel number 6 or something while dealing with the consequences of graphic novel number 5. I mean, Season 6 did the same thing, only instead of an interlude, it was Crisis. So yeah, all of that really worries me, but that's why I say, even if it's not like the Arrow Season 5 of Flash seasons, at least a lot of the things it can do to be a great season. But one more thing I do want. My number one, I'd have to say some Reverse Flash dialogue when he does come back. In case if you're confused and why I have not changed my picture yet, I think it should be something like this.
Remember when you were making out with your first girlfriend, and she came right as she touched your leg? It was me, Barry. I jerked you off at super speed so that it will seem like you nutted at just a woman's touch.